Welcome to the Sunday Dharma talk here at the Nyingma Institute. And I think not everybody knows me, but I'm Hugh Joswick, and I'm a longtime student here, and I've been teaching here for a number of years. And this Nyingma Institute was founded by Tarthang Tulku over now, in 72? So almost 53 years since he's founded this place. And we've had Dharma talks, well, not every Sunday, but fairly consistently since then. So welcome anyway. And tonight's talk is on taming the mind, from fierce enemy to reliable friend. So, I hope this won't be too formal a presentation, but just feel free to interrupt or jump in if you have an idea or a comment that you want to make. Just feel free to come and say. You can just unmute yourself and just express whatever you want to. I assume that all of you have had some kind of meditation experience. Well, I know you have had meditation experience. And one of the first things that I notice in meditation is that the mind is very unstable. You can try and, calm thoughts, but they continue to move on and go on. And there's a old Tibetan saying that Tarthang Tulku quotes here in the, I don't know if you can see this, the Milking the Painted Cow, which is the text that we'll be using tonight for what we're talking about. There's an old Tibetan saying that says, the ordinary mind is like an armless rider on a blind stallion. Just think about that. A wild stallion and an armless rider. So the horse can charge off in any direction. And a blind, yes, thank you, a blind stallion. Yeah. So you don't have any way to control it. The mind just charges off in the way it is, and you just have to kind of barely hang on. Just awareness, ordinary awareness, just doesn't have really a power to do anything other than to follow the way this blind bucking bronco goes. The mind is really changeable, unsteady. And I think that, if you try to sit with that, you'll be quickly appraised that, the mind jumps around quite a bit. You can go, just think of how many emotional states you go through in the course of a day. You can be very content and happy, and then suddenly you're anxious and worried about what's going to happen for dinner or what's next. And then you can be very confident and then feel very worried and overwhelmed by things. You can get, angry, and then, then confused or, forgetful, and then you're forgiving, and then you're back and feeling okay, that things are okay, but, and then you get guilty, and then you're kind of weighed down by other problems. And, it's, and maybe that all happens, before you get out of the house in the morning. You're kind of a jumble of a thing. So, I think we could all agree that we'd like to be on friendly terms with our horse energy, to be able to, ride smoothly, and but the horse gets distracted, and it gets, wants to try to solve problems. It's running here and there, creating habits of action and negative emotions, karma and klesha in Buddhist terms, from this kind of wild energy of confusion and ignorance, And in the Buddhist way of thinking, suffering and confusion and misunderstanding follows from this kind of wild energy. And so Tarthang Tulku says here in this Milking the Painted Cow, kind of got an interesting subtitle, it says, the creative power of mind and the shape of reality in the light of the Buddhist tradition. So it's creative power of mind and the shape of reality. So that's kind of the topic that he's talking about. And he says in there, on page 10, for those of you who want to follow along, that mind can be our best friend, he says, supporting us in every difficulty. Or mind can be our fierce enemy, turning even simple acts of perception into occasions for devastating suffering. You might think, well, how can perception be like that? Well, think, oh God, it's so hot today. It's so hot. I'm just so, overwhelmed by the heat. That it's hot in Berkeley for those of you who aren't here, but and that perception itself then starts to color your whole emotional outlook. So when we torture ourselves with negative thoughts, or we kind of but maybe we can cooperate with mind to cultivate kind of what we care about and what we value, and even perhaps begin to engage with, Buddhist approach to ending suffering. But sometimes it's really easy for me to forget, what's important, as I rush around the day trying to handle obligations and what I think I need to do, and perhaps what mind tells me I need to do, something to that effect. But quickly, things change. It's one of the the fundamental teachings of Buddhism is that everything is impermanent. It's always changing, and I don't think we really. Takes a lot of processing, I think, in order to really know what to do with that sense of impermanence. I tend to want to hold on to ideas that don't always match the nature of the situation, and I tend to, just in a very big sense, I guess. I tend to forget I'm going to die. And neglect then what's really important and valuable. And I get caught up with my problems and projects, and forget what really makes sense. I don't know if I don't know if that's kind of that resonates with you or not, but it just leads the idea that I want to cling to these and don't recognize the changing nature of things, that leads inevitably to some kind of frustration. Even now, I want to present a good talk. You'll say, "Oh, that's good talk," or something. But that desire sometimes really interferes with being present and attuned to the situation at hand. So, perhaps you recognize similar things in your life. It brings frustration in your lives, wanting to do something really good and then not having it succeed according to the way you wanted it to go. And, the idea of this class or whatever is that if we can begin to examine how our mind works and how we fool ourselves we can begin to develop responsibility to our own minds or for our own minds. And then perhaps, see the way we actually encourage patterns that are that lead to this frustration and pain, I guess you could say. But one good thing about our wild energy, it has a lot of energy, but it also shows us that we're not stuck. It's constantly shifting and moving. So even if we think we're stuck, we have the possibility of change. Change is going on, And mind's very changeability is a sign of the possibility that we can be free from at least certain patterns, and for the Buddha say, most patterns, all patterns maybe. But its wildness, needs to be tamed. And that need for taming is very apparent if you've been involved with, someone who's a little manic, and jumping around from one thing to the other, or, quickly flipping moods. And, you might even recognize that in yourself if you've had too much coffee in the morning. It's kind of that jangling quality. So sometimes, I read authors talking about the need for meditation or something, and they use kind of aggressive metaphors for this, trying to encourage you to get to meditation or to go to the gym or to diet or to change any kind of pattern, And it's even in the sutras. One sutra says, trying to tame the mind is like trying to stake a wild elephant to a post, or it's kind of like training the mind is like trying to shackle a convict. Very, very aggressive metaphors, but maybe you felt that commanding voice in yourself as well, You try to direct the mind in a particular way. Okay, I'm going to sit. I'm going to be quiet. Just be quiet. Be still. Be still. Shh. Shh. Be still. No. Oh. You might think discipline really means control of that mind. You got to control it. Be quiet. Okay. But in most cases, it doesn't really work for me. That mental command, can also kind of crush your spirit, if you don't follow it, people start with New Year's resolutions and then they give up, The time for most people to join the gym is in January, and then they maybe make it through to Valentine's Day, and then kind of stop. The same kind of thing with meditation, right? Oh yeah, I've tasted a little bit of meditation, and I really like the way that feels. But it's hard to keep going. Damn it, why don't I sit? So that's kind of that. And if you think that demanding change, it's a command like that, do this, you think that command is going to be helpful. It's certainly not very friendly. But if if you think that demanding change in yourself will work, and sometimes it will, but if you think if you need to command yourself that way, you're setting yourself up for really a lifetime of frustration and struggle, at least, to continue to do anything. So and some traditions emphasize, you really need to change your way. You need to, be taught a different kind of practice to train the mind. And, the Buddha himself engaged in all these austere practices, nearly starving to death, thinking that, you got to dominate the body and, be able to control body and mind. But then he realized that, that wasn't going to lead to true liberation, you know. And so this commanding voice, is we kind of engage in that at our own peril, I guess you could say. Particularly if we think that this way of commanding will produce a fundamental change. Some succeed in that way, you know, they're able to do it, but it's not necessarily as so helpful to understand this path of liberation that the Buddhists talk about. And according to Rinpoche here, this is page 11 in this book on milking the painted cow, he says, Buddhism takes a different approach from this commanding approach. He says, it analyzes how mind generates and operates the programming itself. You know, how emotional qualities and reactive qualities of acting bind us to limited, repetitive ways of being. That's the end of the quote. You know, it goes on to talk about, you know, the way to investigate experience as it arises, and how illusions arise, and, you know, how we can progress from words to an awakened awareness. You know. But it's like almost before we get to that possibility, we need to approach the mind very carefully and in a friendly way, or at least some of us do. I do. And, you know, have you ever spoken to yourself with kind of discouraging words, or, you know, like, you know, that, you know, come on, let's go, you dog, let's get out of here, let's do this. You know, sometimes I don't know, everybody's had, maybe, you know, maybe that's, I don't want to say that you do that. I know I do that, but it's, you know, it's like you know, sometimes you might wonder, if you really hear and recognize yourself, if that language really should be banned as cruel or something. If you would express that to someone else or to a child, you know, you would think, you know, let alone a dog, you know, sometimes it's kind of a very cruel way of being, you know. So starting out in this process of meditation, better to tame the mind and not just train the mind. And I don't know if that distinction will work for you or not, but taming versus training. You know, like you know, there's different views on this, of course. You know, in dog training, I know that there are, you know, some that say you have to command and dominate the dog in order to get it to, you know, obey. But versus kind of providing reinforcement for dog behavior that you want, you know, to praise it, to give it rewards when it does what you want, and you know, and of course the same holds true for human training. You know, they used to say, "Spare the rod and spoil the child," you know, but I think that's been proven not to be as effective as a positive reinforcement for kids. Or at least certainly having patience with the child. I don't know, I don't have children myself, but maybe those of you who do could recognize that, that you know, need to tame the animal. You know. Yeah, of course, there's all different kinds of theories about child rearing, and we don't need to go into that, but just seems to me, with my limited experience, that, you know, like taming a wild animal is much more effective than training it with a heavy hand, you know, a slap or something. That, you know, it's like it's kind of you know, that training kind of evokes kind of like a military discipline, you know, but you know, it's quality, but, you know, it's like, yeah, no pain, no gain, let's train. You know, it's kind of that kind of movement. At least, you know, it doesn't work for meditation that way. So at least for me. Yeah. So think about this. Have any of you ever read this little book called The Little Prince by Anton Saint-Exupéry? Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was kind of a very popular book after World War II, maybe because the author was shot down and killed in World War II. But it's a really, there's a very famous scene in the book, I don't know if you remember it, where it's about taming a fox as a friend. And the little prince is, he sees the fox and he's kind of lonely. He wants to play with the fox. But the fox says to him, you can't play with me because I'm not tamed yet. And the fox goes on to describe how you need, really it's an importance to establish kind of a unique tie with an individual that you're going to tame. And he says, you initially you have to kind of sit at a distance from this person or this being and be patient and say nothing. And the fox says, words are only a source of misunderstanding at first. So you just want to be very patient, quiet, and then each time you meet, you get a little closer, maybe offer a little bit, to show appreciation for the uniqueness of this friend and relating to that uniqueness, requires opening the heart. And the fox says, and here I quote from this, that it's only with the heart that one can see rightly, because what is essential to a friend is invisible to the eye. Now, this advice about friendship has kind of a slightly different flavor from like what you might think about Buddhist training, but I think it offers a kind of like a valuable lesson to how to approach the teachings. In making mind a friend, that we tame the mind through opening the heart and working with it. So, Tarthang Tulku says, make friends with mind, make friends with your experience. It can be our worst enemy or our best friend, But what is it to develop this kind of relationship with mind, Does that possibility even make sense to you? Like, how am I related to mind? It seems like, how can I be on friendly terms with my experience? So maybe it's like whatever arises, there can be a friendly confidence, and an inner knowledge in knowing how to respond to whatever arises. So, taming the mind, that's really kind of suggests a way how to enter into that moment, or a moment, this moment. Could we be said to be responsible, for what we befriend, what we make? That's one of the lessons in The Little Prince, if you remember. That's kind of by taming someone, you're committed. I forget how it's phrased. It's like you're responsible for that person, to be responsible because you've tamed them, and it's kind of cruel to abandon them with that. But in any ways, we might be able to connect it with a greater sense of responsibility to mind, to our experience, rather than just riding the wild stallion. So let's think of how we can use this sense of taming to access the mind. So Buddhism is kind of really interested in the activity of mind, training mind, transforming mind. But the first step is to tame the mind, be aware of the mind and understand what's happening. So that's not an easy task, even though we think, oh, I know what's going on. Mind is so fast. It's not easy to go to direct experience, and mind's already presenting, mind's already narrating, mind's already engaged here. But where can we find the patience to tame the wild animal? So we need patience to tame the mind. So, we're often not supported so much with that kind of exploration of kind of an inner freedom. So society can tell us, you got to do this, do quickly, act quickly, be successful, get money, get fame, get things done, and make yourself happy with those things, But everybody's so busy doing that they don't have so much time or patience to tame the wild mind. At the same time, some of us aren't even aware of what we're feeling, so we're not really taught how to deal with kind of those emotional reactions or conflicting emotional states. We just learn by watching others how they do it, and if they haven't solved how to be, we tend to perpetuate that and perpetuate what they do. So we become strangers to ourselves and a little lost. So one lesson in this taming the mind is to become comfortable in being attentive to what we're feeling, be patient with waiting for the energies to clarify. It's not a matter of repression. It's not a matter so much of training to stop negativity, but just a matter of giving space to notice what's happening. And what if we were able to treat ourselves like we might a good friend who was struggling with some problems? Would we be so judgmental or critical the way we can be sometimes with ourselves? We probably listen patiently to them and accept their troubles without too much judgment. And the same way with taming. Taming requires this patience and understanding. So how can we develop a more caring way to be with mind? You often have quick to judgment, for ourselves. Never going to get any place with this practice. It's not going to, never thinks they're never going to change, even though it's changing all the time. But we don't have to believe what the mind dictates. We can actually make space and negotiate with mind. Tame the mind to be more caring. And, so this is sometimes called neutral noticing. It's the key to making friends with mind. You don't need to condemn or judge what's appearing. You can just recognize and acknowledge the presence of emotional patterns, just to face what's going on inside and not sweep it away, either by suppressing it or ignoring it. You could use an aggressive metaphor like staking the elephant to this post, but that seems cruel and not liberating in the long run for me. And the fox says to sit at a little distance away. If you've ever tamed an animal, you need patience and caring to make one pay. So let's move into a practice of neutral noticing, and see how this can work and evolve. And many of you have probably worked with that, but just come into sitting and shake off some of the all that talk that I threw at you, and just notice how quick you are to judge. Maybe, see if you can recall the last time that you called yourself an unkind name, or lectured yourself about your actions, such an idiot. But instead of immediately judging, just gently watch your experience. Maybe think of something that you thought was an error or that you made a mistake. And how did that, do you recognize a kind of a sense of unease arising? Maybe you can sense an old pattern, or maybe like procrastination that's emerging, or a fear that's coming on. And instead of trying to fix it or stop it, can you just acknowledge, or just notice the presence of that old pattern? You don't need to narrate to yourself what's happening. Just merely notice it. No, just, there's that feeling again. The feeling of unease, the feeling of being insecure. That's how insecurity feels. Maybe that's why I'm so shy. Or what is that feeling of shyness? That's familiar. You can say, there's that feeling of agitation again. It's no wonder I yelled at my spouse. It's very, it's that feeling there. But instead of judging, instead of saying, yeah, that's it. There's that feeling again. So take a moment to really recall an instant, self-condemnation or the way that judgment came to you. Just notice that moment. There's that feeling again. How does it move? What's happened to it? See where it leads. Trace out the consequences. Yeah, that's what happens. Oh. have any reactions to that practice that you'd like to share, or anything that came up for you that may have been different? Jill? Yeah.
There was
This is for the microphone.
a time a little earlier in my life raising children. There are in-laws, there are grandparents, great-grandparents. And I realized like a revelation, I've become a healthaholic. And and as an only child, it was very, it was very advanced because I had very supportive, loving parents, but I was very conscious of taking care. Family dynamics were such that both houses of my family, my mother's side, my father's side, they all loved me, but they didn't love each other. Mm-hmm. So I think I did a lot to make sure that these two houses, and then the other houses I acquired, you marry into another family, and your children marry into more families. And so there's something that I've thought about. Let me see how that segues with what you're, the principles you're talking about. But taking a look at your response patterns and not, forgetting what they are doing to you, but being responsible as much for your own well-being as you are for the happiness of others.
Yeah, thank you. It's really, these, it has just noticing these patterns that we're in, it has a way of, opening you up, or maybe freeing you from the immediate way of reacting or responding. At least that's what I think, maybe we don't need to be captured by the immediacy of the arising, and we want to be, we want to be helpful, we want to be good, and we want to be able to, respond authentically. And so it's a very, can be very tricky to respond authentically or positively. Not that we, I don't know what, but that possibility of being able to step back from the immediacy of the response, to see what is happening, to maybe learn to guide the horse with a little bit of your thighs. I don't know. Maybe I'm lost in that metaphor, but that, you know what I'm saying. That kind of quality of being able to tame the immediacy of the reaction. So that might be maybe that practice was a little too quick for you. Let's maybe we can try another meditation, just very quick, on focusing on feeling itself. Ask yourself, what are you feeling right now? Expectant, maybe curious, puzzlement. Maybe there's some lingering worry about, dinner or what's going to happen tonight, or so. Just kind of tune in to what's going on, and whatever you're feeling, can you just sit quietly for a few minutes and just listen to the body? Just see if you can be aware of whatever feelings you're experiencing right now. It could be feelings of contentment, it could be curiosity, regret, sorrow, desire. So whatever you name it, then see if you can just focus on the feeling itself, just as it is, without adding any further interpretation. See if you can let go of any words or names that you've given to the feeling, and just let go of any just interpretation. Go into the feeling itself. See if you can stay in the feeling without doing anything more. So just stay with the feeling itself. And notice what happens. Anyone care to share what happens when you try to just be with the feeling? What happens? Does it stay the same? Does it change? Does it have a particular flavor, quality?
I
Don?
tend to have very self-critical thoughts. You had mentioned that as an example of negative thoughts. And so I was just kind of sitting with that and and I felt compassion for myself. And like talk to myself like a friend, like, well, you know, it's no wonder you learned that because my parents were very, very critical all the time. And so it's just like a mantra of, you know, criticizing constantly. So you learn it's just an old habit, but it's not true about you. So I was talking to myself like a friend, and it felt good. It felt like it's right.
And the kind of be able to look at it just as the feeling without necessarily, you know, putting the label on it too. That might be another key step in it. Yeah, Donna.
I was in the word that I was thinking of is appreciation, and I think that tonight this lecture has been so perfect for me. It's timely. I do try to change rather than train, rather than tame, and it's just been a big eye opener for me, and even bringing in the Little Prince it has just been so helpful. So my word or my feeling that I was in was appreciation for what I just learned or just awakened to. And as I was thinking about the feeling of appreciation and trying to stay in there without thinking about different things that I might be thinking about, different appreciations, but just the word, just stay right in the word and in the feeling. All of a sudden I found myself smiling. It was a wonderful experience. And I really want to thank you for this.
Well, I hope it brings a smile to everyone's face.
It was great. It's a good one.
But yeah. So, you know, can we kind of even the way in which the word kind of influences us, but you can maybe just even go into the feeling quality itself, you know, and allow it to emerge, like you know, like you. Well, this is, you know, this is kind of an example that my partner, my wife, is taming some crows that she gives a little crow. And sure enough, the crows start coming closer and closer and closer over the months, over the years. Just a very little bit, you know, a little bit. And there's a certain kind of unique caring about it, you know, that there's a quality of the bird that starts to appreciate individual birds. Yeah. Anyway, that a little bit off to the side here, but yeah, but that taming the mind, you know, we need to be able to recognize what's happening. And if you're not aware of what you're doing, and it's not aware of, you know, you can waste a lot of valuable time and energy, you know. And I think one of the things about taming is that you know, you can. It's up to you really to notice what's happening in the present moment. It's easy to scare off awareness, you know, like scaring an animal away, you know, and you're not patient enough, or you know what, you can kind of scare it away, and but you patiently coming back to, well, what is it that I'm feeling, and where, and maybe the smile comes, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's a very you know, what does the mind have to offer? What is happening right now? You know, be mindful about what's happening, you know, and pay attention to what you care about in each moment. But at the same time, you know, it's kind of mindful of what appears, mindful of, you know, what the body feels, mindful of what the mind is generating, or the patterns are generating, you know. And we might have a choice of how we connect with mind. You know, maybe we can cultivate this friendly quality of mind, friendliness to mind. And maybe, you know, once we begin with this taming, we can begin to open up some space in our experience so that we're not immediately drawn into a reaction. But then maybe then we have the capability of turning to kind of classic trainings in how to transform the mind. Not with the the whip or whatever, but with the friendly taming. And Buddhist teachings, focus on the mind, and how mental activity arises and functions, and how to analyze it, and transform the mind, educate the mind, and really look how mind programs experience, as Rinpoche says. So, but it's weird because mind really, you can't point at mind. Where is mind? Mind is like all experience that's arising, and, presents what we experience, it interprets the experience, it kind of is, the master of the experience. It's really there. But where is it? Where do you point to it? Well, taming the mind, being friendly with our experience, good or bad, can be a way of getting comfortable with it, to then begin to investigate and inquire a little more into nature of mind, or how can we work with programming the mind more creatively. So here, let me share my screen here. In classic Buddhist terms, there are 3 trainings, so called. And I'm saying, wait, come here. Where's my sharing screen? Share screen. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Share it. There are classic ways of to investigate the mind. 3 trainings in Buddhism. And I'm kind of saying, well, we first need to tame the mind before we can begin to train it. But the 3 trainings are Shila, which is kind of, I guess you could say, ethical discipline. You're looking at the conduct of body, speech, and mind. The way we use body, the way we use speech, the way we use mind, and looking at what leads to wholesome and unwholesome states of being, in order to bring some stability to mind, to calm it. There's a certain amount of practice and discipline, I guess, involved with that, in terms of moral behavior, or how to do it. But then that, it's kind of, you're kind of looking at karma. You're looking at action, how action then influences and creates mental states and emotional ways of engagement. And then it establishes more of a stable way of life, so that the samadhi, the meditation qualities, you can explore meditation in a way that begins to open up to, you can call it a higher level of consciousness. It opens up to a different level of consciousness, perhaps you could say. And then there's that samadhi, the way it opens. And then there's the 3rd stage, is prajna, which is training in wisdom, and that kind of reveals how mind's creations and fabrications and the patterns came to be. And the idea is that it tries to cut through these views to see a different quality, a luminous quality of mind. And looking at the selflessness of persons and phenomena, which is kind of a fully another topic about the self. But you can begin to see how all these 3 trainings are a gradual process, and you don't progress one to the other, but there's an ongoing process here, and you're kind of listening to it. So this is taken from Ways of Enlightenment, a book here about ways of training mind here at the Nyingma Institute, and then moral discipline, the Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna on the left, and kind of the various kinds of ways to work with those trainings, or what we're training. And with it's a gradual process, but through listening and reading the teachings, which are based on words, we can then begin to contemplate or reflect on that meaning in our own rumination to try and understand what is being said. And then finally, these really, approaching the mind with, a calmness and an inner freedom, we can begin to have direct experiential contemplation through meditation. So there's kind of the study, the hearing, the listening, and then there's the reflecting on that, seeing how it is in your own experience, and then this kind of more transformative quality of meditation practice that opens things up. If you want one more thing of how to put these things in other kinds of context, Shila Samadhi, the 3 trainings, and this is the 8-fold path. Right action, right speech, right livelihood. These are kind of qualities about conduct and how we are. Right effort, mindfulness, and concentration is the training of mind, and the wisdom is the right view and right thought or intention. So let's see, turn off this. How do I turn off the, wait, okay. I've lost the, oh, here. Well, here, I think. I don't know. Did I just lose? Wait, I've lost. Okay. Now we're back. Okay, good. Sorry. I got momentarily confused there. So, these trainings, okay, so they're more kind of like formal trainings. In the Western education, we've got trainings in, our different fields that we're in, but, it's ethical discipline is often taught, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. Buddhism's like that too, but it emphasizes more the kind of tracing out of the consequences of that way of acting, emphasizing more making friends with mind. And you got other kinds of concentration and development in other kinds of educational fields, but tenderly, I think it tends like wisdom is kind of like a byproduct that they hope will happen. And whereas Buddhism thinks you can attack it a little more directly, or attack it maybe. It's probably too strong. But that, you can, that's why I like making friends, taming more than training, at least for the beginning, and then you can begin to train. But, we might not be able to envision, all the suffering that can be, that can be overcome or ceased, but at least we can honor our own mind and learn from, each moment, or at least, like taming the mind and being in tune with what has value. And that taming can be an avenue to a deeper and more fulfilling way of being. So as much as you can, try to relax that relax the immediate reactions. Be kind to yourself and notice with neutral awareness what you're feeling. And that can help, I think, with meditation practice. So, any final comment? Any questions, answers?
Question.
Yeah, Jill. Yeah.
I'm not aware of all the curriculum through Nyingma. I have taken classes, but at the end now of your hour and this information, is there possibility or discussion around creating maybe a longer term course in this training that then segues into these 3 branches that you've just described to, I know it can't cover everything, but could that be a sequence of classes that could be taught?
Yes, yes, and that's a great question. We have this course of study called The Path of Liberation, which kind of takes you from the time of the Buddha all the way to present Nyingma activity that Tarthang Tulku has done. And that actually it's a 2-year course, but we can actually break it down a little bit more. And so sometimes we have classes. We're kind of okay. Here's a pitch for a 4-week class in January that Mark Henderson and I will be teaching. It's on the 4 foundations of mind. No, it's on. It's not the 4 foundations. It's the 4 measurables. That could be a good pathway to open this. And the 4 measurables are, equanimity, love, compassion, and joy. So that's one definite one. But there are Tarthang Tulku's classes of understanding self and mind. We work with these kinds of practices on how to be with mind in a friendly way. And what kind of classes would you like to see? Because we're starting to formulate classes for next year. The winter classes are already available. That's the January thing. But then starting in February through next year, we at least from February to June will be 2 semesters, and will be.
And these will all be available to read about and
yes.
sign up.
Yes.
This will be forthcoming.
Right. Yeah. But that was a great and appropriate question.
Great.
Yeah, Donna. Yeah.
Is there any way that someone could send out a notification of that you're going to be offering these classes and when we're supposed to sign up? I want to take them.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I believe, are you on the, do you get the newsletter from?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yes, I do.
so it'll come in that.
Excellent.
The announcement. We're set, until the end of the year. I don't think the winter quarter is out. I mean, the 4-week January course is out yet, but it will be. Yeah. So.
And also
I don't want to miss it.
Okay.
But also she could find it on the website.
Yeah, you can always go to the website and see what classes are on and what's available. Yeah. So, and you can always ask, and this is kind of nice. I don't do it often enough, but always ask, what am I learning from this moment? And that, that sometimes has an effect on me. It's like, well, what am I really learning right now? Am I learning something? Yeah. And you risk kind of taking responsibility for your own way of relating to mind. That's the Institute offers many classes on how to deal with mind, from Kumye to Buddhist studies to meditation, to understanding self and mind. So anyway, we're over time, and thank you for sharing and coming. And so every Sunday there's a Dharma talk, except for the last one of the year, where last one of the month, each month, where it's a women's meditation section. So I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.